It's Rank Radio. Today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we finally have ESPN's Top 100 rank. We have the Ringer's Top 100 rank. I've got David Walker here with me on the show. We'll tell you where LaMelo sits, where Brandon is Miles Bridges anywhere to be found on any of these rankings. That's all coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Hornets. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. If you are one of the everydayers out there, if you are listening to this show, if you're dedicated to this show, all I have to say is thank you, and I'm sorry that you're such a sicko. But I'm a sicko too, so I say that from that perspective of knowing that. We are free, we are daily, wherever you get podcasts, and that includes on YouTube where you can see our bright, shining faces. I'm joined today by my good friend and now co-owner of the Every Hornets Box Score website, David Walker.
Yes.
David, how are you?
Yes, I'm great. I'm glad to be here. It is the last preseason game. Thank God. Let's go.
No more fake games. I love it. No more fourth quarters featuring G Leaguers, and much respect to those guys. They are trying to make rosters. They are doing the hard work out there, but I'm ready to see a closing lineup. That's one thing you really don't, and it's one of the more important things in trying to win NBA basketball games is seeing who's going to close the game. And you really don't get any indication of that in the preseason at all. You've got to wait to the regular season to see what they're going to go with in terms of their closing lineup. And honestly, with injuries and things, there's a lot that's going to be uncovered in, I would say, the first 5 or 10 games of the regular season that we just have no indication of in this preseason.
Yeah, it's only been this will be the 4th game. I swear it feels like much longer than that. It feels like they've been playing basketball for like a month already. But I think everyone is at that point where they're staring down the beginning of the season coming up next week, right? They're ready to kind of turn the page on this preseason. They've come out relatively unscathed. I found this is a wooden desk over here I'm knocking on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to go with tonight, but we'll be watching. Yeah,
a lot of talk about the preseason being too long. I mean, it's only 5 games, and a lot of teams don't play the starters much.
This is their 5th game, yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't really get that. I mean, I think they should do longer training camps, but they've CBA'd that to death. And I think they should reduce the number of games or extend the calendar for the regular season. But I don't have any problem with 5 preseason games. It's just going to always feel long because you want to see the games that count. Well, speaking of things that don't count or don't, I don't know how much they mean to anyone, but they mean a lot to me. I want to see where ESPN puts the Hornets. I want to see where the Ringer puts the Hornets, and they released their rankings. David, how excited are you for this?
I am on the edge of my seat.
Okay, before I tell you, I'm gonna keep you on the edge of your seat for just a little bit longer because I want to tell you, I want to catch you up, David, on where the other rankings have fallen. So we've gotten a HoopsHype ranking and we've gotten a CBS ranking. HoopsHype put LaMelo at 44. They had Brandon Miller at 58. They had Miles Bridges at 67. CBS followed up with their ranking and had LaMelo way down, 58. Spoiler, that's going to be the lowest you see LaMelo in these rankings. Okay. And then Brandon Miller at 66. That's second highest that Brandon is in these rankings. And then CBS had Miles Bridges unranked, did not include him in their top 100. So without further ado, ESPN has LaMelo Ball as a top 50 player. They break this up into 100 to 51 and then 50 to the – I think they do this in 3, so they do the top 10 last. So he made the second page, just barely. He's number 50, and they write in many seasons. They write after becoming an All-Star in his second season at 20 years old, Ball has logged a total of 58 games combined in the past 2 seasons because of ankle injuries. The rebuilding Hornets also lost a total of 116 games over those 2 seasons, while Ball watched from the sideline. The 2021 Rookie of the Year averaged 23.9 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds in 22 games last season. Now the Hornets and Ball, entering his 4th season, are hoping for a fresh and healthy start. A new regime has taken over in Charlotte, starting with the hiring of Coach Charles Lee, and it will want to see its franchise point guard healthy. So all the focus there on the health of LaMelo Ball. No real mention. I mean, they had the stats from last season, but no real mention of the sort of growth that his game still has to go through, David, to put him up into the upper echelons, to get him on that first page, top 10.
Yeah, it's all about health when you hear these preseason rankings and preseason discussions around LaMelo. And really, it's all about his health when you talk about the team success, too. I mean, we'll get to Brandon in a second, but that's what a lot of people are focusing on. I get the feeling, Doug, that just a lot of people haven't watched these Hornets preseason games. You know, they haven't seen the impact Trey Mann has. They haven't seen a rejuvenated Miles Bridges. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the focus. And like, he's still the superstar. He's still the name. He's still the one that's ranked highest in these rankings for a reason. People are familiar with him. People know what he can bring, even if they are, you know, still chipping away at his overall value to a winning team. I mean, I'm still seeing that. Like, when you talk about win totals, over-unders, and all that stuff, one is the health, and then two is just, is it LaMelo? Can he be the guy on a playoff team? And I'm still seeing the answer is no, you know, in some of these previews. So, like, there's certainly a lot to prove. It feels like most people have decided what LaMelo is at this point. And so I'm excited for him to have a healthy season. But, you know, he does have to kind of prove that. He does have to kind of stay healthy for one, and then show that he can lead a team in a playoff charge.
Well, when you don't play in a ton of games in 2 seasons, people are going to create all kinds of narratives. But all it takes, as we saw, I don't know if you caught Lonzo Ball's debut, his brother, his debut for Chicago after missing 2 years. Everyone had him left for dead. They were making all these kind of narratives, and he comes out and he looks great. So all it takes is being healthy and putting together games, and people will completely rewrite all of these narratives. Now, I will say Danny Chow, somebody that I like, wrote the ringer ranking for LaMelo. They had him at 53, so just outside of the top 50. And Danny Chow writes, Ball does some wild things on the court. No look, behind the back wraparound passes from half court that land squarely in the hands of an open big in the paint. Smart ass horse type shots taken on the move with an exaggerated arc, both to escape the realm of the defense and to show off his wondrous touch. But beyond the flair is a rare archetype, a tall point guard with proven three-point range. Ball is one of only 7 players in NBA history to boast a career average of at least 7.6 three-point attempts per game, and among those players, his shooting percentage from deep is behind only, get this list, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Buddy Hield. Pretty good.
Those are shooters. Those are all shooters. That's a good write-up and a little bit more in-depth than some of you're seeing, than some others you see in this preseason. You know, I heard LaMelo referred to as, I guess it was Bill Simmons and those guys, like the YouTube star, the YouTube generation star, right? Like someone that your kids still love. They still love the shoes. The flash is there. And there's just, you know, like you can take him in clips, right? You can take him in 15-second clips.
But hidden in that, I think, is this sort of like boomer, or right outside of the boomer, like participation trophy. Like you haven't done anything and you're getting the clicks. To me, there's like seething jealousy that lies underneath that.
Oh, yeah. I don't really get the winning. I mean, we've talked about it too, but like, you know,
I don't get winning either, but the Hornets haven't won a lot, so I don't get it.
Explain it to me, please. Like I'm a 5-year-old. But when he's healthy, you know, over 40 wins, right? So like the proof is there. The proof is in the pudding there, and that was with no Brandon Miller. So we just want to see that, and everyone in Charlotte is craving for that. If for no other reason, you know, yes, to taste the winning, but also to say, hey, man, like this is our guy. He is a good basketball player. He can make winning plays. He can contribute to winning. But, you know, we do need to see another healthy season from him. We do need to see that with Brandon Miller. That's the interesting thing to me, though, honestly. Like, over this preseason, LaMelo would start out hot. Brandon would start out a little cold, you know, especially in that Knicks game, right? They kind of flip-flop. But that's not really something the team has had historically and consistently. 2 guys, right, that you have to kind of game plan for on a nightly basis, and that makes a big difference.
I mean, honestly, well, I would say at the height, as Kemba was right starting his rise, and you had Al Jefferson. That's the last time you had All NBA Al Jefferson. That's the last time the Hornets had two guys that you had to game plan for, and then Al took a dip just as Kemba went up. So you had Kemba just sort of everything, but that allowed teams to game plan so heavily against him that it hurt the Hornets, and that's when we had all of these takes about like, well, if Kemba's your best player, then you can't,
right?
You have a ceiling on what you can do. If LaMelo gets to LaMelo's ceiling and Brandon gets anywhere near to Brandon's ceiling, then the Hornets, I mean, sky's the limit, honestly.
Because and it's two guys that can hurt you from all over the court, right? Yeah. Whereas Kemba now, obviously Al's doing his work in the post. Either one of these guys can get going from three on any given night, and have in the preseason, right? That's the other thing. They've looked good. Yeah. They've looked good for the most part in the preseason. They look ready. Like Charles Lee has these guys ready.
Well, so the Danny Chow wraps his write-up with Ball has all the makings of a superstar if only his body would allow it. And these rankings, I think, would be a little bit more fair to the Hornets if only these people would watch the Hornets a little bit more, maybe in the preseason, maybe in the regular season.
Come on.
We'll continue. But that's the thing. We can complain about that all we want, but the Hornets have to earn that, right? I mean, they've got to win games, get on national TV, do all of those things, and that's what we hope, and the hope is the sickness. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Mention Brandon Miller there. We got to find out where he falls on these rankings. Two drastically different ranks for him. I'll just say that right now. ESPN Ringer. Plus, something is really bothering me about several of these rankings. I'll let you know what that is coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, NBA fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe you're sitting around at halftime, you can check out the latest stats and get live play-by-play. I always bonk that. I try to say play-by-play. I don't know what it is about the PL followed by the it's the live going into the PL that I always bonk. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on this. Thank you. On the same page where you place your bets. All right, here's the deal. You can get LaMelo Ball action, right? You can't get much Hornets action right now. I think the betting market is still sleeping on the Hornets a little bit. But there is action to be had, and you can get it on LaMelo Ball for MVP of the NBA Cup. Like, it's not crazy odds. Go check it out. I could pull it up. I could tell you what the odds are. I certainly could. But why don't you go to FanDuel? Why don't you check out what those odds are? I'll tell you right now, they're not like insane odds. A lot of times, I mean, you can get Tijon Salon for Rookie of the Year, I think at like plus 55,000 or something. But like the LaMelo odds aren't crazy, so go check those out. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. View live play-by-play. Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA. They've got season previews all over the place. All the hosts come together. Walker was on one of them talking about the Hornets. So go check that out. You can also check me out on Locked On NBA. I've been doing some afternoon shows for them covering sort of the big storylines from the previous night's action. So go check that out. It's been a pretty cool thing. So let's talk about Brandon Miller and where he falls on these rankings. ESPN has him at 68. They write, in many seasons, Miller's rookie year would have landed him atop the Rookie of the Year ballot. A lot of seasons, however, don't have fellow contenders for the award, such as Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren, both of whom finished ahead of Miller in the voting. Still, Charlotte's decision to take the wing out of Alabama with the second pick in the 2023 draft looked better by the game, and he deservedly rose to the middle of this list. That was our buddy Tim Bontemps. David, 68 for Brandon Miller. Again, he was ranked 66 by CBS and 58 by HoopsHype. So right there in line. What do you think about that ranking?
I think that's right in line with what you're going to see, and it makes sense. I mean, again, coming off that rookie season, I think a lot of people are amped up about what he can be. And he's getting a lot, as all Hornets do, a lot of the residual, crumminess that comes off of being at the Charlotte Hornets, right? Not a winning team.
Right.
Historically struggled to get up above into the playoffs. And so he's on a bit of a prove it too. And I have to say, I mean, I'm not sure how many folks watched him in those, doldrums of the season last year for the Hornets. So like, I think most people who've watched him really, really like what they're seeing from him, and certainly give that pick a thumbs up. I see quite a big jump going into next year if he has the season that we think he's capable of having, and certainly crack that top 50, because I think he's got all the tools. It'll just, if they can get some wins together, that'll be the thing.
Yeah, I mean, quite a jump too. I mean, he wasn't ranked his rookie season, so so he's going to jump almost that's more than 30 spots. He's right behind Cade Cunningham, Draymond Green, Malik Monk, Emmanuel Quickley is at 64. He's ahead of Jalen Green for the Houston Rockets, Bradley Beal, Klay Thompson, Austin Reeves, Jarrett Allen, Zach LaVine. There are a lot of sort of like injury veterans behind him. Although he's ahead of Tyler Hero, who's at 76 for the Heat, and Dante DiVincenzo, who gets a lot of love from the press at 75 from the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that's a fair ranking. Now, what I think is a little bit of an unfair ranking is the Ringer has him at 85.
Yowza.
Which is not in line with any of the other rankings. What do they write about Brandon? So this is Justin Verrier. In almost any other class, Miller would have run away with Rookie of the Year, so they agree with ESPN on that. The Paul George comps may be played out at this point, but it's hard not to think of the 9-time All-Star when watching Miller. He's long, athletic wing, who can spring for a highlight dunk, but otherwise glides around the court with an easy, unhurried pace. Miller also looked comfortable operating a pick and roll, but creating for others and scoring in isolation will be big goals for his encore. Another year of strength training would help him hold up better against NBA physicality. So there you go. That you at least have some. It's not like they just ranked him 85 and then left it at that. Right. I mean, there are things that they're identifying that he's got to prove that he can. I think a lot of the rankings do build in this idea of, we are high on the prospects of Brandon Miller, so we're going to go ahead and situate him a little bit above maybe what he's proven so far, because it just seems like he's the kind of guy that's going to figure it all out. Whereas the Ringer ranking, I think, is saying, well, he's got to do all that stuff first.
Yeah. And, whereas LaMelo is super flashy YouTube highlights, like Brandon has certainly those dunks and stuff, but it's not like he's, jumping out of the gym every night. And not to say the Ringer, I think the Ringer gave a lot of substance, that ranking's a little low for me, but to your point, I think you can see their argument, right? Like, we want to see a little bit more of it before we bump them up into, another level up in those rankings. But still, I think that's just, it is a little low, but I agree. Unranked last year, I think the prospects would have him situated around like, I don't know, 70, 75 or something, but who's to say? I mean, these rankings are for discussion. It's interesting to see the players situated around these guys in those discussions.
Like Trey Murphy at 83, and again, Dante DiVincenzo. I think Miller is will be more of an impact player than DiVincenzo at 82. Kuminga at 80, Hero at 79. Again, I just think there was one that was super ridiculous.
At 80.
Oh, like Zach LaVine at 73 and 72. Nas Reed. Like, I'm sorry, like Brandon Miller is going to have more of an impact on. But again, I'm saying he will, and that's where I think the Ringer is getting caught up. Is they are really taking like everything that happened last year and saying that's all we're going to base this ranking on, and we're not going to give him any credit for what we think he can be.
Yeah, it feels like they're taking, especially some of those lower ranks, team success or notoriety a little bit over what the player can be. I mean, I don't know. You could argue all day. I wouldn't put a Kuminga above Brandon Miller at this point, or some of those other guys. You're talking about a featured guy. I think that has to come in to your ranking a little bit. I mean, you heard Charles Lee talk about it. Like, he's going from, and this will be a transition, right? We haven't seen any regular season games, but he's going from a guy on the scouting report to one of the guys, right? If not the guy.
Yeah.
So, if that's the case and the production continues and goes up, you're going to see these rankings, fly up, and you're going to hear a lot more people talking about them.
It's not only hard, it is one of those barriers that all star level players go through. And it's like either they get stopped by that barrier where they become the guy and they get shut down, or their game either because of confidence or just because they don't have the skills to deal with the double teams and the, Miles McBride up in your shirt where one team says, all right, your whole responsibility for this game is to just bother this guy. We don't forget team defense, forget what, just go bother that guy. That's a barrier that a player has to jump and say, yeah, like I can still hit shots. I can still own my space, as we've been hearing a lot from Charles Lee.
And don't you think, though, I understand Charles Lee's point for sure. Like, that's a maturation of a player in the league. But, I mean, shoot, who else were they game planning for last year if it wasn't Brandon Miller, with LaMelo out? You know what I mean? So I think he had a taste of it. I mean, certainly we saw he was commanding. I mean, I guess you could say Miles,
I think that's fair. I think there are two different discussions. There's like, how do you handle that on a Monday night in January? And then there's how do you handle that in a play-in game situation, one game for your life, or in a 7-game series. So again, so there are these barriers that when you it's fun to talk about this stuff because we haven't even had a player that has been available enough or
just
talented
guard somebody.
enough.
Guys, just check your man.
But there are these sort of steps that you have to get to. And I think Kemba honestly was a player that got to that like playoff level. All right, we're going to double team you. Now you have to figure that out. And I'm not sure that he figured that all the way out by the end of his career. And so, there are these sort of steps that you have to get that Paul George, that I won't say Devin Booker because he didn't get by the playoff on Saturday. I think playoff impact. Like that's where you're getting Devin snookered, right? But Kawhi Leonard, all these guys have gotten through those sort of barriers. Okay. That was some good Brandon Miller talk. I still have to, that ranking did bother me, but that's not the thing that's bothering me about these rankings. And David Walker's on the show. So if you know anything about what happens when David Walker's on the show, I think you might have a little bit of a hint of what we're going to talk about coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We're going to do that. We also have a preseason game tonight against the Indiana Pacers. Will the starters start? Will they sit? What are we looking for as the Hornets finally close out the preseason? That's all ahead. Stay with us. Locked On Hornets. All right, so I'm not breaking any news here, but your sex life is important, but your schedule is also busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office. Who has the time to go to the doctor's office for anything? But you don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, the generics, for up to 95% cheaper. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. No insurance needed. One low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. That's HIMS, HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important health safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. We're finally getting to it. The thing that has bothered me about the rankings, now that we have all the big ones out, I don't think there's anything else that's going to come out. I got ESPN and The Ringer. Those were the two big ones that we were waiting on. And so here's what bothers me. First ranking comes out. HoopsHype puts Miles Bridges at 67. CBS comes out unranked. ESPN comes out unranked. Ringer comes out unranked. They don't mention Miles at all. And what bothers me about that is not that Miles Bridges is unranked. I think that if it is because of the felony domestic violence charges, then that would be, if that's why they're not ranking him there, then I have very little sympathy for that. I mean, I feel like that's a situation of his own making. But I don't even know if he really cares about the rankings at all, so you have to factor that into it. So what bothers me about it is that, David, Miles was a 21-7 guy last season. And say what you want about the injury situation, like, to go 21-7 on any team, particularly a Hornets team that didn't surround him with a lot of talent because of the injuries. That's a difficult thing to do and reflects his skill as a basketball player on the floor. And if you don't want to rank that because of the felony domestic violence charges, because of a moral situation or a moral feeling that you have about it, then my thing is say that in the ranking. Because otherwise, your ranking is illegitimate. If you're going to tell me that like Miles ranked in the NBA is not better, like these, if you look at the bottom of these rankings, it's like Chris Paul on his last leg being like a tutor for Victor Wembanyama. Like, I'm sorry, like Miles can produce more than, I mean, what they had him 67. Like, if you just want to put him in the back side of the 25, like in the 100 to 75 range. That's what I'm saying, but it didn't write something about it. If you don't want to put him in there because of all the off-court stuff, then write that. But to not write it and to unrank him, I think is honestly, it's cowardly. And it hides the issue. Either just rank him and say, look, this is all about on-court. Everything about this is on-court. Nothing to do with off-the-court.
Yeah.
Or unrank him and say, actually, we are factoring off-the-court stuff, and here's why. So that bothers me.
Yeah, I think you're just seeing the overall viewpoint of Miles across the league now. And look, we saw it in the free agency period, right? There just wasn't a lot. There wasn't a big market there. I think for most people, he is still, just out of sight, out of mind, and has been for the better part of 3 years. And, the fact that the Hornets were not any good last year, people weren't watching. Seeing some of that, even though the numbers do pop out at you, I think they're discounting that too. And I think the felony domestic violence charge probably has something to do with it in some people's minds.
No, what I'm saying is it has to, because the alternative is that you just forgot about maybe it is. Who was it? Kendrick Perkins who he said, like, I forgot about Brandon Miller on his all rookie team ranking. Like maybe they just forgot. But because look, I mean, it's easy to forget about the Hornets sometimes when you only win 21 games last season. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, either your ranking is not legitimate, or you have some moral feeling about it and you just don't want to write about it. And to me, that's the damaging part. Like, if you do feel that way and you don't write about it, then we're just ignoring the issue.
He's not being mentioned at all. I mean, you talk about being the third option on this team. He's not mentioned in any of this stuff preseason wise after LaMelo and Brandon. I mean, it's just like I said, he's forgotten. And to your point earlier, I hope he cares. I hope he's listening. I hope he's using that for a little bit of motivation this year, because it says he has his bounce back. That would certainly be helpful. But I think he's got a real opportunity, to prove some of these people wrong as far as what his value can be. I don't think his numbers are going to be the same as they were last year, just because you're hopefully going to have people healthy, and the other two guys in front of him are going to be taking the charge and leading that as far as scoring and driving the offense. But look, they win and he fits in. You're going to see some of that change, but no doubt about it, man. I mean, the clock runs out quick on guys in the NBA. And if the Hornets can't stack some wins together and make that look good, I mean, like I said, there just wasn't a market for him out there. Some of that had to do with the charges. Some of that had to do with probably money that was being asked or maybe what he was looking for. But this is the second summer in a row, at least, where not many people wanted to take a chance on Miles Bridges that were outside of Charlotte.
I think you're right about the numbers. I think we have even in our own minds underestimated how much his numbers are going to dramatically decline, because if LaMelo and Brandon stay healthy, and if Trey Mann continues this streak. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think Miles could be relegated to, some dirty work duty. And you're right, though. If they win, I think he'll be attractive to a team that goes, okay, but if we put him in our situation and make him a featured piece, you can get all of what he offers plus. But if the danger is, because you have to remember, like, Miles, I think, had an opportunity to be traded and declined that opportunity. Like, he set it down in the last trade deadline and said, I don't want to be traded. So he's in this situation now. He has a long-term contract. And so if they don't win, when he goes to get his next contract, I think it's going to be pretty difficult to make that case. And so a lot of these young guys look at Miles Bridges as a leader in the locker room. They said that. They're on the record as saying Miles is one of the leaders of this locker room. So what will be interesting is as his numbers, I would say not as, I mean, it's not guaranteed, but if his numbers do decline, how is he going to feel about that? Is he going to be as okay with being sort of a leader in the locker room and like mature about it and saying, I'm going to do what it takes. I'm going to play my role, do what it takes to help this team win, or is that going to be an issue as we get, and maybe it's not an issue this season, but as we get closer and closer to him wanting another contract, if he does stay with the Hornets and isn't traded, will that become an issue? I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think he'll be good with it. I mean, I think the last couple of years have definitely, taken a toll on everyone, but taken a toll on his, NBA prospects and like his trajectory. I mean, you think back to the year before all this stuff went down, borderline all-star, was going into MSG, putting on a show. I'd have to pull up the rankings of 100 ranks at that time to see like what people thought of him. But like since that time, all these other people have come in. All these other players have filled in the pool, and it's just crowded right now for someone that's been off the radar, whether off the court completely or off the radar with the Hornets who are off the radar, like there's just not that many eyes, and it's just not that fun, honestly, for people to say, oh, let's look at Miles Bridges and the potential he might have. So I think that's just the situation he finds himself in, but can use that as motivation, man. I mean, he's still there. I like for all this, I mean, and Hornets are certainly counting on it, whether it's the third option on most nights or, to win a game like he did against the Celtics last year. He's still a big piece of this team. So team success is going to help him.
21 points, 7.3 rebounds per game, 3.3 assists per game, nearly a steal per game last season, 46% from the field. That could have been better, but a 35% three-point shooter. And he played 69 games, and he missed 10 of those because of the back end of the suspension. Or the secret double suspension, whatever it was.
So like basically a whole season. I mean, basically.
Yeah.
We've always said he was the most available guy last year, really.
And so he can't crack any of those rankings. And my thing is, again, if you're going to punish him because of the off the court stuff, you're well within your right to do that. Just say that, because otherwise it's just strange that he's off all of these rankings. Okay. Final preseason game tonight against the Indiana Pacers. And then we finally move on to we know where they're going to be broadcast on television. There's very little problem watching them. I won't say no problem, as I know a lot of people out there having issues figuring out how they're going to watch the Hornets this year. But final preseason game, do you think the starters start this game? Do you want the starters to start this game?
Yes. My heart, of course, and my eyeballs say yes, please play them. But my head is like, I think we've seen enough. I think we've seen enough LaMelo. I think we've seen enough Brandon, Latigra. We can always run him out there some more. So I think you are going to see a good bit of Tijan Salon. And once you get down into the Trey Mans, I mean, I don't know. Charles Lee seems like he wants to give these guys as much live action opportunity to play together and kind of feel their way out as possible. So it wouldn't shock me to see these guys play some first quarter minutes, but who knows? I think they're ready to turn the page. My guess would be yes. But certainly at this point, you're really just hoping to get out of the preseason unscathed and get on to next week.
Yeah, I understand everyone's reservations about it because of how many injuries to key players the Hornets have sustained over the past two seasons. At the same time, I have liked that they've played the starters a little bit more than some other teams because you have a new coach in Charles Lee who has to figure out what am I doing with the rotations here? And yes, you can figure some of that stuff out in the first 5 to 10 games, but better to figure that stuff out now and try to get off to a good start. So I've appreciated that, and he has given guys nights off for rest. LaMelo Ball got a night off, and so there has been some management there. I think you got to play enough guys where you can play some successful basketball, like not enough to win, but like somewhere where you're functional. So I think that's where a Trey Mann could see some more minutes. If Josh Green is not injured, I'd love to see him. If you can get Mark Williams a few tune-up minutes, I'd love to see him. If you can get, if Vasamicic is,
Shake the rust off.
I mean,
just loosen up a little bit.
We didn't see him at all in the last preseason game. And again, you don't have to talk about injuries in the preseason, which is so weird to me. But if there are injuries, I would love to know about them. And if not, then you want to see these guys like Micic and Green and Mann give a few more minutes. Yeah, I'm fine with no Brandon. I'm fine with no LaMelo at this point. Like, put those guys in a glass case. Let's get to the regular season. No issues there. Everybody else, Bridges, Mann, I think you got to have enough out there to play functional basketball. And obviously, Salon, start him again, play him a lot of minutes. Let's see what we got in the kid. Because what we've seen so far has been really, really good.
Yep. Let's see it out there. It'll be interesting to see how he approaches it. Maybe he wants to give those other guys, down further on the roster some tape. You know what I mean? Some
Musa
Diabate.
Well. I mean, I don't know what you thought about this guy, but I love him, man.
Yeah, I think he's earned a definitive look and perhaps a definitive deal. I mean, he's been energized. And look at this real quick. The people that they're bringing in, the people that they're playing, he's in line with Salon and these guys that are going all out all the time. I mean, Diabate is going all out. You watch Salon and he doesn't know this is preseason. I mean, obviously he does, but he's playing like he's not going to play. He's playing like he's not going to play again.
I don't know. You know what? I'm going to argue with you. I don't think he does. I think he's had a lobotomy and he took out the preseason part of his brain and he's never putting it back.
He just knows ball. He just knows the ball is in the air and there you are.
Orange ball. Yeah. So but I think Diabate's played the same way, and I'd love him to get a look over Taj Gibson at this point. Like have Taj, he's the.
I don't think there's any reason to play Taj. Yeah. I don't think there's any reason to play Taj. That had to be in his contract. 10 minutes in the preseason. I'll see you in November.
Okay, we will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching Locked On Hornets. We'll have a full recap of this preseason game for you tomorrow. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, go check out those NBA season previews that I told you about. The one that has to do with the Hornets is on our feed, but you can go check out all of the others on Locked On NBA. Follow that podcast wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube. Until tomorrow, thank you to David. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte. See you then.